Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this video is intended as a response to a comment I got on my recent upload, my top 5 favorite classic Doctor Who stories, by YouTube user Labyrinth35, who asked me, essentially, who are my favorite classic series companions? And since my original video was a top 5 list, I thought I would do a top 5, response along those lines, but I found it incredibly hard to come up with just 5 companions that I love. So I decided to up it to 10, and this video is intended to be my top 10 favorite classic series companions in Doctor Who. But I'm not going to be doing this as a least favorite to most favorite kind of thing. I basically picked them at random, through memory, through trying to think back of who I liked seeing the most and everything, and the reasons I liked seeing them the most, and I'm hopefully going to be touching on those reasons as I name them off. But in no particular order, this is going to be my top 10 favorite classic series Doctor Who companions. So, coming in at number 1, Zoe Harriet, who traveled with the second Doctor and Jamie McCrimmon. For me, Zoe was sort of a hybrid, and she was the precursor hybrid to what we're seeing in the modern series, in that she could very much be a damsel in distress at times who needed to be rescued, lots of screams and incredulous reactions to spooky monsters and crazy aliens and everything like that. But she was also highly intelligent. She knew how to deal with technology, being that she came from a future world. And there were many times that I saw her spotlighted in the stories that I own where she was an integral part of the story, trying to get a computer fixed or trying to get a missile guidance system working. And it just really impressed me time and time again that she was no slouch. She wasn't there just to have to be saved. And so Zoe comes in at number 1, definitely. Coming in at number 2, Perry, who is probably the most controversial choice, also known as Perpugilium Brown. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. B-R-O-W-N. Yeah, I think that's pronounced correctly. Brown. And, she is basically somebody who did fall back into that sort of damsel in distress type of character. But the thing I think differentiates her character from, say, a Tegan or an Adric for me is that there's a charm in Nicola Bryant's portrayal as she's traveling with the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker. She wants to be there. She's awed by the worlds he's bringing her to, and she's enjoying the ride, even if she can't necessarily trust his Doctor from right off. She had her life saved by the Fifth Doctor, and going into the Sixth, it was a very tumultuous time, yet she very much soldiered on. She wanted to be a part of this traveling the universe, the timey-wimey travels in time and space. And, every time she was coming across as long-suffering, it wasn't in a sort of annoying way, the same way that it would be for Tegan Jovanka, I felt, at least. And so there was a charm and a presence that I loved. Also, I loved how eventually you could get a sense that this was Doctor and companion. They weren't at odds as much as their stories went on. So that's why I love Perry. Coming in at number 3, Ace. And of course, if you've ever seen any Ace stories, you probably know why I've chosen her as one of my favorites. It's all to do with her journey as well, traveling with the Seventh Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy, because essentially you have him guiding her and teaching her and testing her even in just tantamount ways to, building up to something. These are the building blocks being laid for greatness. And you see Ace rising to the challenge time and time again, even with her own uncertainty, even with her own sort of being skittish about certain things that the Doctor's doing and bringing forth for her. She holds her own. And this is sort of the universe of possibilities that the Doctor sees within her. And she has every ounce of being able to stand up to that and go beyond that. We never see that come to fruition, unfortunately, in the annals of Doctor Who history, but I really feel like there was a payoff, and we were all there on graduation day at some point. So, moving on to number 4, I'm choosing Romana Mark II. This is no sort of disrespect to the first incarnation of Romana, of course, who I did find to be an interesting and fun character, but I felt that the second incarnation of Romana was much livelier and much more fun, as portrayed by Lalla Ward, up against Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor. There was a very genial, almost romantic comedy vibe, if you will, between them in each of their stories. You had Romana, who was highly intelligent, much more intellectual than, say, the Doctor himself. And many of the fun times I've loved between them, bouncing off each other, is that she's 3 or 4 steps ahead of him. And, you see him through dialogue going through those hurdles, trying to catch up to her, and then finally when he does, he takes credit for the end result, no matter what it is. There's just this fun aspect to their relationship that probably came from the romantic side of things off screen. I know they were married for a time, and then they later split up, but you definitely see that coming across on the screen. They were just 2 fun characters playing off each other through time and space, and, that's why I love Romana too. So coming in at number 5, I've chosen Leela. And Leela, once again, traveled with the 4th Doctor. She was a character also much akin to Ace on a learning curve, but a different kind of learning curve. It was much more about domestication, I think. She was a wild child. She was a girl of the jungle, a warrior, and she needed to learn a way to sort of behave around everyone else. She was brought to these insane alien planets and on these alien spacecrafts and everything like that. And of course, the first time out, her dagger is up against someone's neck every single time. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know what to make of things. She's highly suspicious. And the Doctor is there to calm her, to try to make her think first and jump later, if possible. And when to jump, when is the right time to jump. So Leela was always a fun character to me because I loved the idea of her character being so different from the norm. She wasn't from Earth. She wasn't, a typical, that is to say, domesticated Earthling. She was a warrior woman. It's kind of like having an Amazon from Wonder Woman's Island of Themyscira traveling in the TARDIS. It was just really, really cool. So, coming in at number 6, I've actually gone with 2nd Doctor companion, Jamie McCrimmon. And he is a cat that, once again, a lot of the charm that I love about Jamie, he's a proactive character, definitely. He's a tough guy when he needs to be, throws the punches that need to be thrown, but he's not, he's not gut reactionary. He follows along with the Doctor. He has implicit trust in the Doctor. And a lot of what I love about Jamie is the fact that you have this great rapport between him and Patrick Troughton's 2nd Doctor. He just will listen to every word, but he also challenges the Doctor. That's the thing. He does it in a friendly way, and he does it in a questioning way. He's truthful to how he's reacting to a situation, but he doesn't get up in the Doctor's face like some other characters that I've talked about previously who were more annoying and more, I should say less likable. Jamie McCrimmon was definitely a tough guy character when he needed to be, but he was also a character with a lot of heart. And you saw that great rapport between them because, of course, there was an off-screen rapport. So that's why I love Jamie. Coming in at number 7, I've chosen Jo Grant, as portrayed by Katie Manning, who was traveling with, of course, the 3rd Doctor, John Pertwee. And her character is one that I felt embodied a similar sense of awe that I've described in Ace and Perry and that kind of thing. She really desired being there, along for the journey, and just experiencing the wonders the Doctor had to show her. But she also embodied an innocence. She was definitely the questioning companion, and not in an invasive way, but in a very curious way. Why are we here? What's going on? What does this mean? She was very much the voice of us, the viewer. What is going on, Doctor? What are we supposed to think of this? And I just loved that rapport once again. I got to go back to that term between Katie and John. They were, as I've heard, referred to the Doctor Who family. You had them, you had the cat who played the Master. They were all very much aware of what they were doing, aware of what they were putting across, and they were having tremendous fun, and they all loved and respected each other off screen. So you saw that put forth on screen. And her character, just that essence of awe and wonder, it truly made me feel drawn into whatever the story was, even some of the more ridiculous ones. I was right there alongside Jo with eyes wide, mouth agape, and just enjoying the tremendous fun and adventure. So coming in at number 8, I've chosen Ian Chesterton, the first, really, one of the first companions in Doctor Who history. Traveled with the 1st Doctor, as portrayed by William Hartnell. Ian Chesterton, for me, played by William Russell, I should add, was the first archetypal male, companion in Doctor Who for me. He was very intelligent, but he was tough. He was no nonsense, and he was a very honorable and respectable guy, I mean, he saved the day more than once, and he had fun with where they were going. He wasn't long-suffering like some other companions in Doctor Who history. He did share a sense of awe, but he also still carried with him, and you saw this through every one of his portrayals, this aspect of getting home in the back of his mind. As you watch he and Barbara Wright, the two teachers from Susan Foreman's school, that they need to get home. They want to get home, but they're also having fun with where they're finding themselves. And Ian was a character, like I say, he would question things if he didn't, if he had suspicions that somebody was up to no good, he wouldn't sit back and go to the doctor and say, what should we do about this? He would confront the matter at hand. But he wasn't all fists first. He was definitely, from an intellectual vein, I must find out what the situation is. And there were some aspects of his character that were put into precarious moments where he did have to resort to fisticuffs to save his own life, save Susan or save Barbara. And he rose to the challenge every single time and gained my respect. I mean, short of being a superpowered superhero, this guy was an honorable and likable cat in the history of Doctor Who. And so for me, that's why he's necessary to this list. Coming in at number 9, I've chosen, of course, what will probably be the number 1 pick for most people who love the classic series, none other than Sarah Jane Smith, as portrayed by Elizabeth Sladen, traveling with the 3rd and 4th Doctors, respectively, and also meeting the 10th, as it were, and the 11th. There's not much I really need to say about Sarah Jane if you've ever seen anything to do with her, except to say that she was lovable. She was no nonsense. She was tough. She was sort of the female equivalent of an Ian Chesterton, very honorable, would rise to the challenge. If she suspected something ill goings on, she was right there in the thick of it. She had a kind of reporter vibe to her, kind of akin to Lois Lane, where she'd get herself into danger from time to time, but she wasn't just a damsel in distress. She could very much hold her own time and time again. And of course, between her relationship with John Pertwee as well as Tom Baker, you saw, again, to fall back on that term, a great rapport between their characters, which came from something off screen as well, and a great respect for their characters. She was odd, and there were times where she felt like, she wished she could be somewhere else because she got herself into trouble. But that's the thing, she had the nose to follow that trouble and stand up to it. She didn't walk away from it. She didn't scream unless that was the last resort, She was a very fun, very awesome character in the history of Doctor Who. So coming in for my number 10 choice, this is the one that will finish us out for this top 10 list of favorite companions in classic Doctor Who, is none other than the first. Susan Foreman, as portrayed by Carol Ann Ford, with William Hartnell's first Doctor, the granddaughter of the Doctor. Susan, it's highly nostalgia and just really being impressed and finding her cute, I have to admit, but being impressed with her character as far as she could hold her own at times. She could also be a damsel in distress. She was much whatever the story needed, and that was something that, back then, I assume the actress who eventually left Doctor Who felt like there wasn't much she could do, that she, wasn't breaking new ground, but I felt like that was one of the charms of her character. She was there to be what needed to be there. She could fit any role because she's a time lady. She comes from Gallifrey. And she really has that sort of adaptability to her situations. She's always, first and foremost, the Doctor's granddaughter. She'll let you not forget it. Whenever she's lost or whenever she's in trouble, the first thing she always cries out is grandfather, And I love that idea that we're seeing someone so closely related to the Doctor. His blood is there with him, traveling on these adventures, and she's just as in the thick of it as the other companions that are with them, Ian and Barbara. And so, you have this level of her implicit trust in her grandfather, always leads her back to him. And I love that toward the end of her tenure, we see that this trust is now something casted off by the Doctor, not for a disdain, not for cutting off familial lines, not for, pushing her away, but to keep that growth that she's been on. She's been on a growing curve ever since they stole away from Gallifrey with the TARDIS. And he finally has gotten to that point where I have to let her be the woman she's growing up to be. And I love that. I love that whole aspect of her character, what she meant to the Doctor. It was absolutely put forth impressively by Hartnell and Carol Ann Ford. And, like I say, as far as most wanted companions ever for the 50th anniversary, as we're approaching that as of the time of this recording, boom. I can go no further than Susan Foreman. I really hope she shows up. And I'd love to hear a couple of throwaway lines about what she's been up to since we last saw her. So, thank you once again, Labyrinth 35, for asking me what my favorite classic series companions were. I'd love to hear from anyone who watched, including yourself, who your favorite classic series companions are. You don't have to do them as a top 10 or top 5, unless you feel like you can answer easily enough that way. And, I hope this video finds you well. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.